So quarter run, run. So quarter one ran. Oh. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm bringing you the quarter one reading wrap up. So previously I've included my reading wrap-ups in whatever reading challenge I've been doing. But this year I thought I would try something slightly different because there are heaps of books I read that are not part of my official TBR. And hopefully this will mean I don't end up with hour-long videos every month for my TBR game, which I'll have that playlist linked up in the cards and down in the description. Recently, I watched a quarterly statistics video by Four Paws and a book, who I'll have linked down below, as well as the video that I'm referring to. And I decided to incorporate that idea of reading statistics also in my quarterly wrap-ups. So quarter one is from January to March. And during that time, I'll just move over here and I'll put up here all my statistics. I managed to read 11 books, which I know for some is not a huge number, but I'm really happy with 11. I read those over a total of 63 reading days, which means that breaking that down over a month, I'm kind of getting to around 20 days a month that I'm actually reading. My total pages for those 11 books, and that does include the pages of books that I read via audiobook, was 3,247. So averaging that over my 63 days of reading, I was averaging around 51.54 pages a day, a reading day. I'm surprised to see that 10 of those authors were actually new to me, with just one of them being one I've read before. 8 books were backlist books, so that's books that were released 2023 or prior, with 2 books being released in 2024 and 1 being a new release in 2025. I actually started 4 new series and I've caught up on 2 of them, though one of those is for The Illusion of Stars, which is technically a part of a series, but it's the only book that has currently been released. So though I'm starting a new series, it's really the only book that has yet been released, which is why I've caught up on 2 series. So I read those 11 books in the following formats. 3 of them were audiobooks, 3 of them were physical books, and 4 of them were ebooks, with 1 being a mix/immersion reading experience. I'm actually really surprised by this number because genuinely audiobooks is what gets me my numbers, gets me through my reading, but I've recently become a little bit of a fan of the Stuff Your Kindle Day, so I have filled my Kindle app with quite a lot of books. And because I didn't really want that to be a waste, I found that I was then prioritizing those books when figuring out my reading challenges, my TBR list. It is definitely a lot easier being able to read just in the palm of your hand and it not taking up any space where a physical book does. And obviously an audiobook is one that you need to listen to and has a whole different realm of experience associated with it. I tend to read those majority when I'm driving long distances. So I will say I was a bit surprised to see that 4 of my 11 books were ebooks. Taking that into consideration, I read 3 books from my physical TBR. So those are the books you see here on my bookcases, the books I currently own. 4 of them were Kindle, so those were those 4 ebooks. And then 5 of them were library. So that either means I borrowed them through Libby, so that could have been an ebook, though at this time they were either physical or audio. You'll see that those numbers don't make up 11, and that's because I did include the immersion reading. So when I read Eragon, which I'll discuss later in this video, I read that both via audiobook and as a physical book. So that means when counting out these numbers, I did include my physical TBR copy as well as the borrowed from the library audiobook copy. And I will continue to do that going forward. I did include, as you can see, a list of genres, but I actually found this slightly hard because a lot of the books have multiple genres associated with them. And what do I class as the main genre? But I ended up deciding that 3 of these were romance, so that's generally contemporary romance. 1 was a nonfiction. 1 was an autobiography. Technically, I could have classed that as nonfiction, but really I could have also classed it as a memoir or a erotica, and that's The Further Adventures of the London Call Girl. We'll discuss that a bit later in this video, but I did find that one, selecting a genre for it, a little difficult. Then I had 2 paranormal romances and 2 romantasy. On some levels, I feel that these are the same thing. I would class a werewolf or a shifter book as fantasy, but when I was looking them up on Goodreads, actually paranormal romance was separate to romantasy. So I'm not sure. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Are these the same thing or are they 2 different genres? I also had 1 retelling, though I guess technically I could have said I had 2 retellings and 2 romances, and this is really where I started to struggle with selecting my genres, and I had 1 fantasy. Let me know down in the comments if you're interested in knowing about what genres in the stats, or are you just happy to hear about them when I'm giving a bit of a rundown, a recap of the books. So my average star rating was 2.91. I will say I didn't have the best quarter 1 reading, with majority of my books being 3-star. So I didn't have any DNFs, I had no 1 stars. I did have 2 2-stars, 8 of them were 3 stars, and I had 1 4-star. Unfortunately, I also didn't have any 5-star reads. So most of the books I have read really were quite mid. They were good, but they weren't the best. They were just so-so. We will discuss that further when I go through the recap of all 11 books. But I do struggle with DNFing, which is something I would like to do more when I'm finding that a book just isn't for me. If you watched my book inventory, I'll have that linked up in the cards and down in the description. You'll know that back in January 2025, I had 516 books. As of the filming of this video, so it is currently the end of April, so these numbers are a little skew whiz in comparison to the quarters, but I have actually brought an additional 21 books into my collection, so I now have 537, and I will be honest, some of them are double ups, but let's not discuss that. Going into my reading goals for the year, I do have a Goodreads goal of 25 books, and currently we are sitting at 11. So we are definitely making good progress. In the first quarter, we are nearly halfway there with another 3 quarters to go. So I do think I'll definitely be able to reach my 25 reading goal. If you watch my Plan to Pan video from last December, I'll have that linked up in the cards and down in the description, you will know that there was a stack of books that I would like to get read within 2025. Unfortunately, so far, I have not read any books from that list. So going into quarter two, that is something I would really like to focus on doing. But those are my quarter one stats. I'm really happy with my current progress. I know that there are a lot of people out there who read a lot more than I do, but for me, I'm really happy with getting through 11 books in 3 months. And if you've been watching my TBR games, I've also really been enjoying participating in a range of readathons. So if you have any upcoming readathons that you would recommend I participate in, please let me know down in the comments. But now on to the recaps of the 11 books I read. So the first book of the year was Secrets of the Tulip Sisters. This is by Suzanne Mallory, and it is a contemporary romance family drama. I'll put up here some information so you'll know how many pages, how many stars, the genre, what format it was in, all the fun details. But as you can see, this was a 2-star read for me. Personally, I found the romance to be blah, the family drama to be blah. And honestly, I did not like the main character, Kelly. Like most people, I do love a good tea-filled secret. But really, these characters were hiding things that I felt did not need to be hidden. And it really just caused a lot of unnecessary drama to kind of move the plot along, though it didn't really seem to be going anywhere fast. I am a fan of romance, and I definitely understand that a romance is a book with a happy ending. It's not just a book with a love story, it is a book that ends up with those characters together in a happy ending. But happy ending to me does not mean that the characters have to be rushing into marriage or have a closing scene pregnancy. Couples can be happy without the added drama of weddings and pregnancies, especially when they're only just starting in their relationship. And all that drama means that they don't really know how they work and operate as a couple or in a relationship. So adding a third or jumping into marriage, for me, just feels a bit like a recipe for disaster. So I don't love it when romance books end in that manner. I really should have DNF'd this book, and it's easy to say that in hindsight, but I knew it the whole time I was reading it. I was making comments like I really should DNF this, but I am a completionist and I wanted to get through and see whether it got better, and it did not for me. This might be the book for you, but it is not the book for me. And I probably need to clarify that going into these brief reviews and recaps. All my comments are my own opinions. It is not a comment on the author. It is not a comment on those who enjoyed this book or gave them higher ratings than me. And it's also not a comment on those who didn't enjoy a book. Everyone has different tastes, different moods that change whether they enjoy a book at that time or not. So at this moment, in this time, having read this book, it was not meant for me. Then I read A Bookshop Christmas by Rachel Burton. This one I ended up giving a 3-star, and it is another contemporary romance. It's just set at Christmas, though I did read this at the end of January, moving into February. This book focuses a lot on the book motif, which I absolutely love, with it circling mostly around a bookshop that is owned by the main character Megan's family and a romance book club that is held there regularly. You definitely get what you would expect from a romance, complete with a happy ending, But overall, the romance doesn't feel rushed, though it is very light and fluffy, even when they're dealing with probably some hard topics, including the main character Megan previously losing her husband, and the main male character Xander Stone and his relationship with his mum. Overall, the book really does make fun of itself and the romance genre, but in a way that's not nasty. It kind of highlights that it knows what it is and where its place is in people's reading journeys. I especially loved the inclusion of the hotel room with only one bed trope and the actual conversation that follows afterwards between Megan and her friends about how it's not actually that fantastic and it's kind of awkward. Plus, this book has a dog, which I am a massive fan of, and I'm pretty sure his name is Trevor, but he's this cute little sausage dog that just really makes it so much better. Then I read Tidy the F Up, The American Art of Organizing Your Shite by Messi Kondo. I gave this 3 stars and I did listen to it via audiobook. It's a really short book, only about 3 hours long. I think it's about 192 pages, something like that. And it definitely plays off the concept of the Marie Kondo method of cleaning and organizing. It uses a lot of fun, casual language, has a lot of pop culture references, and if you can't tell from the title, it does include a lot of swearing. I've previously read a lot of decluttering and home organizing books. I found this one to be fun and enjoyable read, but for me, having read quite a lot of these books, this style of book, it didn't introduce any new concepts to me. It just brought them in a different way. And actually, it was quite fun and really kind of made a joke of the situation, which might be right for you if you are struggling with decluttering and tidying and don't want to take it too seriously, but it's definitely not going to work for everybody. Then I read The Further Adventures of a London Call Girl. So this is the second and final book in the duology by Belle de Jour. And this is probably going to be my most spoiler-filled recap because I have a lot of feelings. And honestly, this feels kind of weird to say because it is actually a autobiography based on the blog of Belle's life. So it does feel maybe not 100% nice or appropriate to comment on the character when really it's real life. But I also feel that I should give a genuine review of what I thought of the book. And honestly, it was really disappointing. I absolutely adored the first book. I reread it last year. You can have a look at my last year's reading challenge, which I'll have that playlist linked down in the description. But in that first book, Belle really had a lot of respect and confidence and, you go get them woman power for not just other people, especially women, but she also had that respect for herself. And I didn't find that so much in this book. Belle quits sex work in the first few chapters of the book. So she's moving into a new life in corporate UK. But I don't really felt she left that industry for herself and her own next steps, but to please the boy from the first book, which was a bit disappointing. So the boy and Belle get back together. If you remember from the first book, they ended because he cheated. And really quickly, she finds out that not only is he still cheating, but he has a secret anonymous blog where he discusses the ins and outs on every woman he's cheated with. In fact, he is just, I do not understand how she can be in love with him because he's a complete jerk. I was at first a sucker for the drama. I thought that all this would end in a big drama. She would quit him, move on to greener pastures. But that is not what happens. She does travel overseas, and a large portion of it is her kind of finding herself overseas. But really, she spends majority of the time worrying about him, what he thinks, what he feels, looking at his blog, and she doesn't mention to him that she is aware of any of that. They stay together, and she spends all this time trying to be perfect for him. And like I said, she stalks his blog and makes comments on the other women, including comparing herself to them in really fat-phobic and critical ways. And yet, on the other hand, while this is all happening, she is putting herself in situations where she's the other woman. And even in those situations, she makes critical and unnecessarily nasty comments about the other women that these other characters are with. I do understand that confidence ebbs and flows as you live through your life, but I do not see how she went from being such a confident and confidence-building character in the first book to having such low self-confidence, because that's exactly what all these scenarios play out to me. She plays off like she's a confident woman, but really she isn't, and she needs to bring other women down and get the love and the appreciation from men around her to make herself feel better. And in fact, it actually made me question my love of the first book. I did still love the writing style and the formatting of the book, and actually, honestly, I wish there was a third book, even if it's set 10, 20 years later, because I really want to know what happened next. Like, does she continue to dull herself down for some man, or is she coming out of that shadow and shining brightly? Overall, though, I really enjoyed the first book, but this second one, I would not recommend. If you've read the first book, just leave it at that. Leave that ending as it was and do not continue on to the second book. If anything's changed, it's because it's been a number of hours since I just filmed that other section, and I've just got back from work and we're continuing on. Next we have Bleeding Hearts. This is by Greta May, and honestly, it is also one that I should have DNF'd. I only gave it 2 stars, but it was so short that I just thought I might as well just finish it up rather than DNFing. It is a Romeo and Juliet young adult YA retelling. It's set in a small country town that is basically ran by 2 rival gangs. So the whole town is focused on these 2 gangs to the point that everyone in that town is almost in one of the gangs or the other one. I didn't really mind the Romeo and Juliet aspect of the story, but I do feel that the author, Greta May, did not need to continually tell me that was the coding behind the whole story, especially with quotes like, "Quick, grab your Romeo, let's go, grab your Juliet, where's your Juliet?" That wasn't the name of the main characters. They were not called Romeo and Juliet, so you didn't need to fully tell us as many times as the author did that was the inspiration for the book, that it was a retelling of that story. I guess it's one of those situations of show, don't tell. So like I said, it's a young adult book. It is a bit of a coming of age story. It's based on 2 teenagers from different sides of the track who fall in love as they are reaching maturity. They're turning 18. But honestly, they end up in some terrible situations, and some people around them get killed because of these situations. But really, it's because their parents couldn't manage their own drama over the past decade or so, and it's left to the responsibility of these children to deal with it. Honestly, I picked it up as the blurb on the back really gave me dark romance feels, and I was interested to see how they had that subplot, that kind of dynamic that you normally see in a mafia dark romance, in a YA book. I do not think it was executed in the best way possible, and it wasn't really for me, which is really most of the reasons why I gave it a 2-star. Then we read Lyle. That's by Tammy Lund, I think is how it's said, and I gave that one a 3-star as well. It's a standalone that is set within the Moon Falls collection. So that's a collection of standalone novels set in a certain location with different characters, but you don't have to read any of them together. They're basically just one-shots of people's lives in certain moments. It is a second chance shifter novel, and it was a really quick, fun read with a perfect amount of spice, which I did enjoy, as well as the twist towards the end. Though I would say it was nothing overly special, it was just a good time and I enjoyed reading it, but it's nothing more than a 3-star type book. Then we read Between Mischief and Magic by Marissa Cirillo. That's also a 3-star for me. So the story follows a demon who is on the wrong side of the bottle and a princess who's lost her magic. Overall, the stakes are pretty high, especially in relation to the princess who has lost her magic, but the journey is relatively easy. And even the dark stuff is really just kind of glossed over. The really deep stuff that you think are going to have such a massive impact on the characters, it does, but for like 2 seconds, and then something else is happening. I would definitely say that it is a cozy romantasy, though in parts I did think it was verging on too long, especially considering the evenness of the tempo throughout the book. Even though there's highs and lows, emotively, from the way the story is written, you are not going up and down with those emotions. You're reading these things, but overall, the writing style is really even. And emotionally, there isn't much spikes in what's happening. I think overall, I really liked individual elements of the story, but altogether, it felt a little lackluster. Though I definitely would like to read more from the author just to see how I feel, because the concepts and the elements within the story were really enjoyable. Like I said, just overall, it was missing something. On the other hand, The Botanist and the Beast by Viola Vine, that was my only 4-star book. It is a Beauty and the Beast retelling with romance. And I did find it to be a really interesting take on the Beauty and the Beast concept, especially considering that the villain of the story kind of shifts. So the blame is shifted on why they're cursed. In the original, it is because of something that Prince Adam does. But in this one, it's not actually because of Prince Sebastian for why he's cursed. And it definitely makes the whole story a lot darker than the original. Honestly, I'm actually not sure why I enjoyed it so much. The pace was quite slow. Though there was things that happened, it wasn't high action, and there really was a lot of time between said action for the characters to interact and get to know each other and kind of fall in love in a pace that felt right. The relationship is really soft but spicy. There is a decent amount of kink involved in it, especially considering Prince Sebastian's animalistic instincts. But there's also a lot of soft and supportive moments between him and Theo. I did like the twist at the end, as well as the questioning of who really was the villain and the protective and suspicious nature of Theo's sisters. Theo is really a beautiful person, to the point that he's almost too perfect. He's really patient and forgiving, especially in relation to the situation that gets him stuck in Prince Sebastian's kingdom, and the way he forgives the behaviors of that snobby, entitled rich girl. I would say in the first quarter, this was definitely my favorite book, hence the 4 stars, and I would like to read more from Viola Vine. Then I read Illusion of Stars. So this is by Sarah Marie Page, and it's also just a 3-star for me. It was quite a long book. I listened to it via audiobook, and it really felt a bit like there was this huge journey that got them nowhere, except for creating the forced proximity that allowed for the romance to, develop. And really, I felt like Isabel, who's the main character, was very much there's nothing special about me, to the point that she is almost unexplainably desired by multiple characters, and it puts off that not like the other girls atmosphere. I read a quote that said they felt like it had Duramining vibes, and honestly I could agree to that, especially with Eric, the second in command, overly powerful in relation to magically powerful Vold, who does things for the love and the acceptance of his father. Then you've got the other character, Isabel, the girl who would rather study than do anything else or build relationships with anybody else to ensure that they reach her goal of becoming the royal physician, which unfortunately is also to overly prove herself to other people. There's kind of this bad boy, good girl atmosphere going on. And it is one of those scenarios where both characters have these deep, deep feelings, thoughts that maybe, depending on what side of the coin they're on, are frowned upon by those around them. And I could see that fitting within a Dramini fan fiction. I did find it slow at times, especially considering there was this massive journey that just got nowhere, and then all the action happened in a location that they weren't on their way to even. They had to then scoot on over to a completely different location. At times it did feel a little boring. They were just traveling, and it focused heavily on that character development, that budding relationship between the 2 main characters. Though I did find the upcoming war and the character development outside the main couple to be really interesting. There were certain things that Isabel did that she commented on that being the benefit for other people, but really it was just something she wanted to do, and it was a seemingly selfish choice. I am keen to continue with this series, but the second one hasn't been released yet. On a side note, I will note there is a trigger warning, a very heavy trigger warning for self-harm within this story. And then I read Eragon. So this is by Christopher Paolini, and I did immersive or co-mix read this one. So I read a portion of it via audiobook and the portion of it physically by this copy that I own. I did end up giving it 3 stars. I had never read it before reading it this year, even though it was a hugely popular fantasy book when I was younger. Unfortunately, I did not like Eragon as a character. I know he's young. I think he's only around 15, 16, but really he makes some incredibly stupid choices that cause so much more harm than good. And it really bothers me the times that he flat out ignores the advice or the wishes of other characters because he thinks he knows best. Especially when Mortag says to him that he cannot go to the rebellion and he would like to leave him where he can, and he keeps bringing it up and asks over and over, and Eragon gets him into a situation where he has no choice but to go to the rebellion, which really is not a benefit to him. Though I will say there are so many secrets in this book. Everybody has secrets, to the point that they do not need to be secrets. Some of the situations and the secrets that kept actually make me then think, how can I actually fault Eragon for his behaviors, which really are based on what he knows? And most of the time, he has no idea, because people are not giving him the information he needs. There's even a section in the book where Saphira says that she knows information, but Brom has made her promise to not tell him until he needs to know. We are yet to find out what that information is, so I may change my tune if I later on find out what that is. But at this point, I think you've got this boy off on this crazy adventure to try to save the kingdom, the world, and you are not giving him any amount of information that he needs to do so. The overarching plot does have a little bit of reminiscence to Star Wars, and I am questioning whether high fantasy, though I know that that can be some controversy on whether this book is classed as high fantasy, but I'm questioning whether that is for me. I enjoyed it overall, but I wanted things to happen a lot quicker, and this is a chunky book. I enjoyed what was happening, but a lot of it, the journey getting there, it didn't really work for me. Actually, I'm almost starting to question whether I like journey books. I really thought I did. When you're traveling on a journey and things are happening and adventures, but after reading the 11 books I've read so far and realizing the comments I've made a lot on the books that have journeys in them, I'm almost unsure if I really enjoy that trope within stories. I am yet to judge, and I will continue to read journey books, but I'm unsure if it's the high fantasy or the journey aspect, but there was large portions of this book I just did not enjoy. I am planning to continue on with this series from now, and I really did like the character Montag, and I'm interested to see what happens there. And last but not least, we read The Witch of the Prophecy. This one is by Victoria Jane, and it's also a 3-star read for me. Though I will say I don't know if some of my dislike of this book is because I went into it with the expectation of it being a why choose. I mean, seriously, look at this cover, and it's even tagged as reverse harem on Goodreads, so that's kind of what I was expecting. So really, it was just another vampire, werewolf, hot girl love triangle. And look, there is a time and a place for that trope, but I did not go into it expecting that it was that trope. Therefore, I was really disappointed, which probably took away from some of my enjoyment of the book. And maybe if I hadn't gone in with that expectation, I would have enjoyed it a bit more. I know I have said this a lot during this video, so I am kind of realizing I must be in my truth era, because the secrets throughout this book, and I mean unnecessary secrets, drove me crazy. There were just too many secrets, lies, and games, and if that was me, if I was Davina, the main character, I too would have got the hell out of Dodge. I guess also in addition to that, I'm normally a fan of the fated mates trope, but I really couldn't get behind it here, which is probably because Davina actually had no idea what was going on. And that was maybe a little too non-consensual for me. And that kind of gave me a little bit of a bad taste. So though at first I was enjoying Eric as a character, he is the werewolf in the prophecy, that whole situation gave me a little bit of a bad taste. This is a 3-part trilogy. It's The Witch of the Prophecy, The Wolf of the Prophecy, and The Vampire of the Prophecy. So you're probably wondering, will I be continuing with the Prophecy series? And the answer is probably yes, because I am a sucker and I need to know what ends up happening with these characters, which is really why I struggle to DNF a book. If I haven't DNF'd a book within the first chapter because I just can't stand some aspect of it, then we at this point in my reading journey are not DNFing it. That is definitely something I probably need to work on in the future, because I have got a lot of books. In fact, around me I have over 500. So I need to take the time to read these books. And considering I only get through 11 books in 3 months, that means if we're going to split the year into quarters, we're really only going to be looking at a maximum around 45 books for the year. So I cannot get through all those books in my lifetime if I do not start DNFing and unhauling and cutting the books from my life that are just not bringing joy. But that was my reading wrap up for quarter 1 of 2025. Please let me know down in the comments what your favorite read for this quarter was. If you have read any of the books I discussed today, and if you have, what your thoughts on it. And if you would like to see me add or remove any statistics from my earlier discussion. But until next time, I'm Verity. This was my quarter 1 2025 reading wrap up. And now to the outro.